We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help.
Savannah Guthrie pleading for the public's help. The deadline set in ransom notes possibly connected to her mother Nancy's disappearance has now passed.
So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation.
So the search for Savannah Guthrie's mother is now in day 10. The FBI team is removing cameras from the roof of the Guthrie home, and our next guest says perhaps they're hoping for better luck after the sheriff couldn't recover any video.
Global security expert says ransom abductions in the U.S. are rare. And even when they do happen, they usually don't involve some of the factors that we're seeing in this case.
And Stewart of Torchstone says another possible motive, ideology. The fact the victim in this case is directly related to a member of the news media in this politically charged environment is something you can't rule out as a potential motive. He does say, though, ideological kidnappings typically involve some sort of manifesto.
It's taken a while, but it looks like the penny is starting to drop. By the way, is Tucson in a sort of Bermuda Triangle? This must be the first case we've dealt with in Lord knows how long, where the cops simply haven't been able to salvage any digital breadcrumbs. Just think of some of the latest cases we've dealt with and the video footage we've gotten. Nick Reiner, 3 separate sets of CCTV, including when he got arrested. Charlie Kirk, lots and lots of video, including of his vehicle arriving at the scene. Brian Koberger, lots of home security footage of his vehicle coming and going. The Tepe murders, they literally tracked that vehicle all the way back to its source. So why not here? Well, actually, there could be a simple reason.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
In this analysis, I want to deal with perhaps the biggest boo-boo of this case, as well as the dog question. But before we deal with the dog question, I want to deal with the no CCTV question.
It is so serene here. I have never been in a place like this, and I've been all over the world. What I was immediately struck by was this, the darkness. On February 1st, there was a full moon. I think we're in like the half moon phase right now. Even with a full moon, the light pollution out here is negligible. There's none. It is so dark, and the type of cacti, the flora and fauna that are native here in Arizona, for somebody to be able to sneak up in the dark, not to be seen, or to bring a car in with no light.
And there's your answer. If a vehicle drove in the dead of night with its lights off, conceivably it could have moved pretty much in and out of the area without being seen. Of course, the caveat to all of this is you need an area that is extremely dark, and of course that area of the suburbs doesn't really seem to have any real street lighting. And so it does also seem as if we're dealing with a very wily perpetrator to know that if he just turns his lights off, he can move basically invisibly, despite the power and the penetration of digital devices. And besides that, also to be so aware of the security inside and outside this home, the Ring camera on the front, although not connected to a subscription network, and then the floodlights at the back. And this is why I have a hunch we might be dealing with someone who is ex-law enforcement. I saw someone left a comment, are we still looking for a crazed ICE agent? Obviously a sarcastic question. And the answer is possibly yes. Meanwhile, let's recognize a contribution that really made my day today. I mean that. Thanks again, Joanne Gamil, 2718. Thanks so much for that. You know, I sometimes look at what other channels are doing and how hard I've got to work. and to get similar traction, and this just makes it more worthwhile. So thanks very much for that. I also see that 30% of you are not subscribed, so if you're one of those, please do hit the subscribe button. And let's get started. So now let's deal with two additional questions. Firstly, what happened to Nancy's dog, as well as the biggest boo-boo thus far by law enforcement. Any idea what that might be? So let's start with what happened to Nancy's dog. Nancy Guthrie, who lived at her Catalina, Arizona home till her disappearance on Saturday, January 31st, has been pictured with a black dog. The photo of the dog was most prominently visible in the missing persons posters that authorities released of Nancy Guthrie. It was also seen with her son-in-law in a family photo she posted on Christmas 2025. That's according to the Hindustan Times of all publications. Now, dogs, as many of you know, feature quite prominently in true crime. I must say, I find this subject quite interesting. Anyone remember Dieter in the Chris Watts case? Anyone know where Dieter was when that crime took place? And Murphy, Kaylee Gonzalez's golden doodle. Anyone know where that dog was when the crime took place in Moscow, Idaho on November 13th? And that dog's barking may well have expedited the perpetrator out of the house on King Road sooner than he wanted. Murphy's even got his own Instagram page. Lacey Peterson's golden retriever Mackenzie, whom Scott Peterson used to claim Lacey had gone for a walk. Mackenzie even features in one of the crime scene photos. Nicole Brown Simpson also had a dog, an Akita named Kato, and it was a man walking a dog that alerted the cops to her murder in Brentwood. And don't forget the starring roles Eddie and Keeler, the blood and cadaver dogs that played a pivotal role and arguably provided the biggest breakthrough of the Madeleine McCann case, one that I think remains quite underappreciated to this day. In the Amanda Knox case, a bloody trail leading downstairs ended up being the neighbor's cat that had apparently cut its paw on broken glass. John Bonet, by the way, had a Bichon Frise, two actually, named Jacques and Jacques 2, that actually shed a very sharp light on that little girl in ways many still don't appreciate. Unfortunately, John Bonet's dog wasn't home when that incident happened that claimed the little girl's life. And the same thing in this case. Because Fetch was Savannah's dog, not Nancy's, it also wasn't home. Otherwise, the black Aussie Doodle could have shortened the abductor's visit considerably, those 41 minutes, if not prevented his visit altogether. Fetch made headlines in the Daily Mail over Christmas 2 years ago when the Guthrie family announced a new addition to their family. Savannah even posted this image of Fetch to Instagram, including special Fetch-themed merch. So that's the answer. This wasn't actually Nancy's dog, unfortunately. Number 2, the biggest boo-boo thus far by law enforcement. Probably the biggest boo-boo that's been made in this case was not keeping traffic, that's vehicular and foot traffic, off the gravel drive. Had they preserved the crime scene, they could possibly have retraced the steps of the abductor and perhaps Nancy's steps as well on the gravel of the drive. It's also possible that they could have isolated tire treads from the driveway, assuming a vehicle pulled onto it from the adjacent tar road. You would think someone would do that if they wanted to commit an abduction.
I'm surprised that we're this close for this shoot today, because the scene was turned over, I believe, and many in my field believe, a little prematurely. And what happened in the beginning, and I don't blame law enforcement for this, it's tough, and they treated it as a missing persons case. That brought so many people into the location right over my shoulder here, and they trampled over everything. The driveway you see here, you should have been able to pull tire prints from there.
And we've seen this before so many times. People initially think it's a missing persons case, and so they are quite casual about it. They don't think they're dealing with a crime scene, and so lots of people move in and out. They're just looking for the person that is missing, and it's treated in a completely different way to how one would treat a murder scene. And that included turning it over prematurely. That's something that also happened in the Ramsey case, also happened in the Madeleine McCann case. It was only determined later in that case, in the Ramsey case, that a bowl of pineapple was photographed and turned out to be crucial evidence. Also, the book Mindhunter was photographed. I'm not sure whether these items were properly documented, inventoried, or even taken into evidence, although I know the bowl of pineapple was checked for fingerprints.
I believe in these instances, having worked crisis incidents for almost 25 years. I believe less is more. You put out what needs to be put out, and you don't want to step on the message. You don't want conflicting information. And if you notice, when this whole thing started on February 1st, just 9 days ago, 10 days ago, that was the problem. Too much information was being put out, and that's not always good.
And when it comes to a real kidnapping, a play-by-play scenario is really the scenario you want to avoid. But in general, in a true crime case, you don't want to activate the public, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to come and trample the crime scene and also put pressure on law enforcement. When they've got enough on their hands as it is, they've got enough pressure brought to bear on them as it is. We've seen this time and time again. We saw it in the Koberger case. We're seeing it now in almost every high-profile case. I do think the right response now is to push the public to one side, hold out on those press conferences, and go back to square one and try and figure out what evidence they have. And surely, even if the guy was driving with his lights off, you are going to be, if you look carefully, you are going to find the CCTV at some point. They have the timestamps. Focus on those timestamps. In any event, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.